What is going on, guys? Welcome to this video. My name is Cameron and this is the review for Ultimate Spider-Man issue 96. Now you're probably wondering, Cameron, where the heck are you? Well, for this video and this video only, I'm going back to my old style of comic book reviewing where I'm actually not on camera and it's literally just my voiceover commentary. And for any of you guys that wasn't here when I first started Ultimate Spider-Man, this is pretty much how I used to do my original comic book reviews. And the reason why I'm doing it is because if you remember from the previous review, I have like this serious like hay fever thing going on, like where I'm a little bit run down with a cold and my eyes are really sensitive and stuff. So yeah, I figured just for this video only, since I'm nearly dying. And anyway, moving on, what actually happened in the previous issue of Ultimate Spider-Man issue 95? Well, if you remember, we actually started off by following Spider-Man a few months ago actually running into a vampire and interfering with the vampire hunter Blade from killing a vampire. And moving along a few pages afterwards, we actually learned that Ben Urich was covering a story for the Daily Bugle about vampires and someone who was a victim of a vampire attack. And then towards the end of the issue, Ben Urich actually ended up getting bitten by a vampire himself. And that is pretty much where the previous issue ended, with the fate of Ben Urich in the vampire's hands. And let's not forget, we also had Mary Jane freaking out about Kitty Pryde and Spider-Man going public with their relationship due to the events on Krakoa Island. And of course, that means that Kitty Pryde and Spider-Man, aka Peter Parker, can't have a normal relationship from now on. There's restrictions on that, and those restrictions could come to light in some of the future issues. But for now, this is the review for Ultimate Spider-Man issue 96. I hope you enjoy. Okay, so we're getting into the issue and we are joining Ben Urich lying on the ground, picking directly up from where the previous issue left off, with Ben Urich being bitten by a vampire. Spider-Man previously crashed through the window to save him, and there's all this commotion going on, and we've got Morbius the vampire in the room right there, and it looks like he's actually one of the good guy vampires. He's actually trying to help save Ben Urich, and straight away I just love how Spider-Man is sort of just seeing all of this vampire craziness for the very first time, just his reactions to these situations where he honestly can't believe what he's seeing right now. It's really interesting because we are 96 issues into this Ultimate Spider-Man series, and you'd think that Spider-Man would have seen probably nearly 100% of all possibilities by now, but no. He's chucked into the world of vampires and he is just as confused as ever, and it's brilliant to read about and awesome to see unfold in the panels on the comic book pages. Now what's actually going on with Spider-Man is that he's obviously freaked out, but his main concern is to get Ben Urich to safety and hopefully get Ben Urich some help. And so whilst Morbius takes care of the vampires, Spider-Man takes off with Ben Urich to the hospital, and this is one of my favourite parts of the entire comic book because Spider-Man has no time for messing about. Like when the hospital doesn't believe that Ben Urich was legitimately bitten by a vampire, Spider-Man picks up the doctor, picking him up off the floor, and shouts at him, telling him that he's a person with spider powers, and so a vampire shouldn't be that unbelievable. And it's just awesome how Spider-Man takes care of the police officers that are running towards him and stuff. And so I just love that whole seriousness of Spider-Man. When it gets too much, when it gets too crazy, Spider-Man just goes into a whole serious mode, and it's awesome. Now as we move on throughout the issue, we can see that Morbius is actually visiting Ben Urich, obviously with the intentions to potentially and hopefully save Ben Urich from becoming a vampire. But for some reason Spider-Man just doesn't understand this and straight up just starts beating the crap out of Morbius. And even after Morbius tells Spider-Man that he's not there to hurt Ben Urich, Spider-Man still grabs him and starts fighting him anyway. And it's like, dude, like, let the vampire do his thing. Either way, I'm glad that Morbius is portrayed as a character that is sort of, in a way, like Spider-Man. Like, with great power comes great responsibility. But in terms of this, with Morbius, it's more to do with vampires and stuff. And I just love how Morbius can sort of see the bigger picture. I like the way his character is written and just the way his character is drawn by Mark Bagley. Obviously, it's a very mature version of Morbius in the Ultimate Universe, and it's just awesome to read about, and you actually feel like Morbius gives off a friendly presence when on the panels of these comic book pages, and so it's a welcomed character. And now getting into what I would consider the meat, the main part of this entire issue, is when these other vampires appear and actually take a massive chunk out of Spider-Man's neck, sticking their fangs into his bloodstream. And of course, this is another favourite moment of this issue for me, is when they realize that obviously Spider-Man's blood is radioactive, and so when they actually begin to feed on Spider-Man, it just completely backfires on them, and obviously Spider-Man hasn't got pure blood. It's what gives him his spider powers is his radioactive blood. And so I absolutely loved it how Spider-Man just instantly starts freaking out, like full on thinking that he's dead, like he's becoming a vampire. And it's just like what a 15-year-old would do, where he doesn't actually stop and think about the situation and like what the vampire actually did after biting him. He just straight up starts freaking out and starts wondering about like what's going to happen to him and everything, until Morbius actually gets him to calm down and explains it to him. And it's just pure awesomeness that technically Spider-Man cannot be bitten by a vampire and it have any major crazy effects on him. It's just amazing. And I also thought that it was a nice twist to the story as well, because as you're reading this issue, you actually do think that Spider-Man is in some potential danger of these vampires from getting bitten by one of them. But then you realise that actually Spider-Man is technically immune to these guys. So yeah, it was awesome. But as we're coming up to the final few pages of this issue, we can see that Ben Urich has been healed, Morbius has actually saved him whilst all the commotion was going on, and then Morbius just takes off, like he literally just disappears as fast as he appeared in this Ultimate Spider-Man series, and I can't actually remember if we will see him again, so we'll just have to wait and see, like keep going through the issues and see what happens. But joining Peter Parker back in school, obviously sat next to Mary Jane, and it seems like they are actually on talking terms now, and you can just see that this has heavily affected Peter Parker, because he's been thrown into this crazy thing of this vampire universe that he didn't even know existed. And so I'd say that because he's 15 years old and stuff, it's potentially scarred him for life a little bit. I mean, he's probably gone away from this with some nightmares. And so we can see Mary Jane and Peter hug it out at the end, and I think this is really something that we should be paying attention to from Mary Jane and Peter Parker, is that Mary Jane will always be there to comfort Peter Parker, regardless of whether they are getting on as friends or not or something along those lines. And I think that's the bottom line of Peter and Mary Jane's relationship, that no matter what, they will always be there for each other. And so, yeah, the issue closed with Peter Parker hugging Mary Jane, and it was so sweet. I mean, you can see the background of the class just sort of fade out as they sort of appear in their own little sort of situation right there, and it's awesome. But that is the end of the issue, guys. Thank you very much for reading. Thank you very much for listening to this review. I mean, I thought it was awesome that, of course, the art style and the writing, and to be honest, I did think that this vampire saga with Morbius was going to be like one of them bad sagas of the Ultimate Spider-Man universe, but as I started to read it, I actually began to remember how good of a saga this actually was, and I'd say that it's up there in some of the good sagas of the Ultimate Spider-Man series. And even though it was a short saga, I mean, it was only like 1 or 2 issues long, it was awesome nonetheless. And so guys, I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10. The part where Spider-Man starts freaking out after he's been bit is just hilarious and quite traumatizing at the same time. I mean, Jesus. I'm sorry that I wasn't on camera, and to be honest, I might do one of these sort of reviews every now and again, you know, like where I'm not on camera and I go back to the commentary. It's kind of like a bit of a fresh take, and these videos are a lot easier to get out there just because there's not as much editing and everything. So yeah, guys, let me know what you thought of this in the comment section below of the comic, and of course let me know what you thought of me reviewing the comic like this commentary sort of format instead of the usual on camera stuff. I would love to hear your thoughts. And last but not least, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to check out my second channel, the link is in the description, and I will see you guys all in my next video. See you later.